it's about time for us to start our first panel. Are you guys excited about meeting these authors? Again, we're going to have a casual conversation with each of them. I have some questions that I have prepared, but you'll also be able to leverage chat to chime in with your comments and questions, and you're going to get to hear excerpts from their book. So I want you to get your mind and your heart ready to receive from these authors. They have cleared their schedule today just because, here's what they told me, just because this is something that they wish they had had when they had gotten started. And so they wanted to be a part of this event so that they could pour into you and help make the process easier for you. Isn't that amazing? Those are the types of people that I have the pleasure to work with. So I want to start bringing our panelists up so that we can introduce each one of them, and you will be able to connect a face with the name. So let's see, let me bring Zach up first. Mr. Mills, come on up. All right, let's get our technology working. Zach, good morning. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Good morning. So happy to be here.
We are happy to have you. So, family, Zach is out of Tennessee, if I am remembering correctly, and he wears many hats. And we talked about just a little bit ago that one of the things that I think is really important in your quest as an entrepreneur is to figure out how to create multiple streams for what you do. So Zach is one of those people, and all of our panelists also share that belief. So Zach is an author, so you'll hear more about his book today. He's also an instructor, a communications consultant, and I love this, a master storyteller. So Zach and I share this passion for telling stories to connect with the audience, and you'll learn within our 5-day workshop why that is so important. Zach, thank you so much for making time to be here with us today. I'm excited for the audience to hear your insights and learn more about your book.
Thanks so much.
All right, next we're going to bring up Chandra. Let me find Chandra. There she is. All right, Chandra, welcome to Live Your Dream. Hopefully you are going to be able to get your camera going. There she is. Welcome, Chandra. Good morning. And you are looking bright and festive. I love that. How are you?
I am doing great. Good morning to everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are excited to have you. So family, quick story. Chandra and I used to work together back in the day. So I am from Richmond, Virginia, and that's where Chandra currently is. Now, she's had the pleasure of moving around a little bit, but she's currently residing in Virginia. She is also an author, of course, so you'll hear about her book today, a speaker and a filmmaker. So isn't that really cool? You're going to have an opportunity today to connect with Chandra, and she has an exciting mission to address a very prevalent problem that we face in the world today around domestic violence. So her movie that is currently in the making, Silent Enemy, did I get that right, Chandra? Is going to be released soon. So isn't that exciting? And I saw some of you, as I was looking at your comments, some of you have dreams to take what God has given you and turn it into a movie. So you're gonna have an opportunity to interact today with someone that is on that path. Chandra, thank you so much for being willing to dedicate your time to pour into our audience today.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, now let me bring Miss Chandra up now. All right, Chandra, come on up and join our panel and screen. Chandra is a new author. There she is. Chandra, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well, and I'm excited that you are here with us. So Live Your Dream family, Saundra is our newest author. So Saundra just published, let's give it up for her. She just hit the button on her book in July. So
Right.
she is very fresh into this process and is going to be able to share some of her journey with you today. So Saundra is an author. She's also a pharmacist by trade, resides in Florida, sunny Florida. And she also has a passion for helping women. So you'll learn more about her book and the personal mission that God has her on with her book released. And to further that mission, she also leads workshops. So for those of you that have a dream to not only write, but to speak and to pull together women or men around a topic, Stephen, maybe that's something for you because you want to help facilitate breakthrough. Well, Saundra is a person that partners with God to facilitate that. So Saundra, thank you so much for being willing to spend time with us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Absolutely. All right, we have one more panelist, family. So now I'm going to bring up Terry. Terry, will you come on up and join us on the screen? All right, we're going to get Terry up. There he is. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning.
I hope you are doing well.
I'm excellent. Glad to be here. Excited about today's event.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you. So, family, Terry Phillips, of course, is also an author, but he wears many hats. So, for those of you that think I do a lot, Terry puts me to shame. So, you got to check out his bio. In today's email, he wears many, many hats. So quick summary, of course, he's an author. He's also a consultant. He's a pastor. So he pastors a church. He's going to school to further the mission that God has given him. He coaches and consults. So you're going to hear from him today and the diversity of gifts that God has placed with him in him. So for those of you that feel like, oh my gosh, I'm interested in so many things, trust me, I get that. But Terry also gets it too. So you're going to have an opportunity to interact with him and learn about his experience and how all of that, how God used all of that together to bring him to where he is today and to create an impact on people. So Terry, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Super glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So what I want to do is now I'm going to ask all of our panelists, come back on camera. Everybody come on in. We're going to go ahead and start our discussion. Oh, we got some congrats. So Saundra, everybody is giving you love and congratulations on publishing your book. So family, let's go ahead and get started with our Breakfast and Books panel. So I have a few questions that we have prepared to help you get the most out of this experience. But as I shared earlier, feel free in the comments, in the chat, to share if something hit you and it's an insight for you, tell us that's a golden nugget that benefited you, okay? But also if there are questions that you have, I want you to make sure that you feel free to shout those out in the comments. And as much as we have time, as much as time allows, we'll try to get those questions answered. So I want to start with some fun questions, because, you know, when I talk to aspiring authors, some of them feel as though there's a certain profile for an author. And I'm a firm believer that anyone that God has called can be an author. And so it may look a little bit different. So my first question, and Chandra, I'm going to ask you to chime in first here, is tell us about your experience with books as a child. Did you have a favorite book? And if so, what was it?
I actually did not have a favorite book as a child. When I think back to my childhood, I was more into movies, and I still am, hence the filmmaker part of my life. And to be honest, I read so much, I really didn't have a favorite. I was a little bit of a nerd back then. My mom would read 1 to 2 books every weekend, so I found myself in that same pattern. And so honestly, it's kind of hard to remember way back then if I had a favorite book or not. I just really enjoyed reading because the thing about stories, it took me to another place in my life. So I was able to really come out of my environment and my world and step into a whole new world.
You know what, Chandra, I love that because I'll be honest, I don't remember all the things that happened for me as a kid either. And, you know, sometimes you have other interests. So you've talked about your desire to write a movie and you're actually in that process now, but you've also shared with the audience that the benefit of books is that it allows the reader to take a journey to another place, right?
Yeah.
And so that's so powerful for us when we read books, and that's what you get to be a part of as an author and as you work on your movies as well. It's all about telling a story. So thank you for sharing your insights and your journey there. Terry, what about for you? Did you have a favorite book as a kid? And if so, what was it?
I'm going to say, woo, I'm so glad she answered she did not. To be perfectly honest. I did not. I was not a reader early on. However, I received Jesus Christ at about the age of 12. And so I fell in love with the Bible. And so it would have to be my absolute go-to as the reading component that I use every single day from the time that I accepted Christ. So I do not have a particular book that I can reference other than that. And that sounds a little corny, but that's why I've been pastoring now for 27 years and have all the missions that I have because that reading alone had such an impact and influence on me.
I love it. I love it. So family, what you've heard, you don't have to have always been a reader to write a book. Anyone can be called to write. And I love what you shared, Terry, also about the importance of faith in your journey and how it has molded and shaped you into the person that you are today and how integral a part that is of your life. So thank you for sharing. Well, let's talk about what some of the authors are currently reading. So Zach, talk to us. Is there a book on your bedside table right now that you're reading? And if so, what is that book and what is it about?
So there's not a book on my bedside table. I have just finished a doctoral degree, so I haven't been wanting to read anything, so for a while, just to be honest. But there is a book that's in a box that I really, really, really want to read. And it's a book by James Paul Gee called Literacy and Education. So this guy, James Paul Gee, starts studying like gaming. He starts studying the ways that young people are engaged in the world of gaming. And he's an amateur gamer, so he starts going to all these conferences. He knows nothing about gaming. But what he's studying is how people who are amateurs at gaming become literate, become kind of amateur experts in gaming by going to chat rooms, going to websites, the kind of mentoring spaces that exist virtually. So the way he's studying, but it's not just about gaming. He starts now exploring and expanding his research to explore how are people learning things in this world? How are we becoming literate? So it's interesting to me because now we're living in this virtual world. Lots of people are learning how to become literate doing things like Zoom, hosting podcasts. Right. So I'm fascinated now with how people are learning how to do things that they don't know how to do, how they're becoming amateur experts. And I think right now it's a really interesting time to think about those things.
Agree 100%, right? I mean, just think about this opportunity that we have right here to come together using technology. If we had to rely on having a live event today, it would be challenging to do, right? With all of the social distancing requirements. So I definitely had a learning curve as I decided that I wanted to do more things like this. And I know that some of you, I would love to hear in the chat, how many of you can see yourself hosting a webinar or a panel or something like this? Is this something that you see fitting into your journey as an author, a speaker, or a coach? So yeah, we all have things that we have to learn. And so it sounds like this book could be a really nice thing to have in your toolkit, right, Zach, to learn how do people best learn, not only to impact you and help you with reducing your learning curve, but also as you look to lead and inspire others, how you can help them. But here's what you've also heard, family, is that's busy. So for those of you that are busy, you're like, well, I don't really have a whole lot of time. That can identify, and I'm sure that all of our panelists can identify. So don't let that stop you from pursuing your dreams. Zach, thank you for sharing your perspective. Saundra, what about you? Do you have a book by your bedside table right now that you're reading? And if so, tell us about that book.
Actually, I am reading two different books right now. The first one is called Sacred Slow, Holy Departure from Fast Faith, and that's by Dr. Alicia Britt-Chole. And I had the opportunity to hear Dr. ABC, as she likes to be called, years ago, and she just blew me away with the way she poured out her heart, her sincerity, and just the internal peace that she displayed. And so that encouraged me back then to read one of her books, which was Anonymous, Jesus' Hidden Years and Yours. And so that book was excellent. And so now in the Sacred Slow, she addresses the value of meticulously developing our relationship with God. And she says it's time out for quick fixes and fast faith. And so that's actually a theme that parallels my book, Released, in this slow but meticulous but certain and intentional relationship with God and progressing in life that way. And also I'm reading The Heart of a Leader, 52 Emotional Intelligence Insights to Advance Your Career. And this is by a young lady called, her name is Kristen Harper. And she's a Florida A&M grad, which is my alma mater, and she's a business and marketing genius. She has decades of experience in Fortune 15 companies, and she's leading her CEO of her own consulting company, and she's also a minister and a youth mentor. So I think the books that I choose, I tend to stick with certain authors. When I read something like Dr. ABC, which was excellent, then I'm looking for what is she coming out with next. Also, people that I can identify with personally, you know, a rattler, a woman, you know, the topic, emotional intelligence. We know emotional IQ is a real hot topic, hot button today. And so those are the two books that I'm reading. Both women are very great authors and just impressive people.
Yeah, I will agree 100%. I've had the pleasure of meeting ABC in person, and she's an amazing person. Yes. And I've read Anonymous. I've yet to read Sacred Slow is on my list. So I know based on what you've shared that is going to be a blessing. But family, what you've also heard from Saundra, as she shared that she's reading multiple books. Sometimes I find myself in that space. I wonder if do any of you ever find yourself like I'm reading 3 or 4 books at the same time? Like, how does one do that? But it happens because there's a certain, like you said, Saundra, there's a certain topic that author is speaking about that I want to learn about. So I'm pulling something from this one and something from that one, and together it helps address holistically the things that I am working towards that God has called me to. So I can identify with that as well. But audience, what you have also heard, which was a huge nugget that Saundra just dropped, right, is that once she finds an author that she really likes and she knows that they add value, she wants to see what else they have. That's the exact type of effect that you want to go for as an aspiring author, or when you write your next book, for those of you that have published, right? Because it's all about creating that type of connection. You also talked about that, Saundra, is you feel connected to the author and what they write is relevant to you. It speaks to you. And as a result of that, you want more. So you want to not only continue reading the current book that you have, but then you're also interested in what else that person has. And so that's what we are all working towards as authors, is to create that same type of emotional connection. So thank you for sharing that. Let's see what we've got in the comments here. All right, so we do have some folks that have been hosting events. Hey, Rhonda, welcome. I didn't see you come on in. You hosted one last week. Congratulations to you. Charlene says, yes, eventually I want to host my own events. And Nolan says, I'm a co-host on an internet radio show. Awesome, Nolan. You should put that in the comments. Tell us about your radio show so that we can check it out and follow you. You got to do what you got to do. Anything is possible. I love that, Stephen. That's the exact type of mindset that you want to have as you pursue your dreams. Chanel says, absolutely, it's what I desire to do most. All right. So we have some future speakers using technology that are going to be using it to get their message out. Yes, I desire to be a public speaker, helping women overcome the residual effects of toxic relationships. Wow, Crystal, what an inspiring mission. All right, and oh yeah, hey Raga, welcome. I'm so glad that you are here. So continue to leverage the comments, family. We want to hear from you as we go throughout our discussion today. So now I want to talk about something that has nothing to do with writing. Nothing to do with writing at all. And I'm going to start with you, Saundra. What do you do when you are not writing?
You're talking to this Chandra? Sorry. We have Saundra and Chandra. We're so close. I always hesitate. Like, oh my God, is she talking to me?
I know. It's so hard. Well, you started, so Chandra, go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. I love to watch movies. I love to do nothing. I love to lay on the couch. I enjoy spending time with my husband. He's busy. He's a journalist, so I rarely see him. And I just enjoy just relaxing, yoga, meditation, anything that's very peaceful and calming because, as you said, we're all very busy. And so any chance, any moment that I get to really just do nothing feels amazing to me.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I wonder, Chandra, are you an introvert? Do you identify with that term?
I do. Many people tell me that I'm not when they meet me, and I say, well, I truly am. Y'all don't understand what it takes to get dressed, to go out. I have to go home and like relax, relate, release.
I am with you. I am with you. And so that is important for our audience to also hear. So if you are an introvert, which by the way, I am one also, and God has called you to do something, yeah, sometimes it can take a bit out of you to do what God has called you to do, but don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you. So sometimes as an introvert, we can desire, as Chandra has shared, to kind of pull away, to do nothing, to have quiet and peace and do something like yoga and read, right? And that's okay. So that's what I want you to hear as we go through our discussion today. It's okay. You can still do all of that and still have an amazing call on your life. And I'm not surprised to hear, Chandra, that movies are high on your list. I'm curious, what would you say is your favorite movie? Like, you don't have a favorite all-time book, but do you have a favorite all-time movie?
I actually do, and it's an older movie. I can't remember what year it came out, but I tend to like a lot of action. My favorite movie is Enemy of the State with Will Smith.
Ah, yes, I remember that movie, and I love Will Smith. So
yes. Really,
really cool pick. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about what you do when you are not writing. Terry, let's go to you. What do you find yourself now? I don't know, because you've got a lot of things that you have going on. So I don't know if we're going to hear a fun list or what. Let's see. Let's see what you got.
I really don't have a list. I will say to you that, one, I did not perceive you as an introvert. I did not. But I'm always managing. So, of course, the pastorate takes a lot of time. I also work at a local college where I am a life coach for men of color, an engagement coach for students who are part-time. And then outside of that, I have two college students in my home who keep me running all the time. And I'm very well connected with my family. So if I'm not doing something, I feel like something is wrong. I was up last night until 2 o'clock working on Cornell coursework, but that keeps me working, keeps me balanced. I don't have a whole lot of downtime. I don't watch TV much at all, but I'm fulfilled by doing things. And so that's kind of what, I do love to work out. So I'm at the gym at least 6 days a week at 5 in the morning.
Yes, get in that that endorphin rush first thing in the morning to start your day. So family, you're hearing some diversity in answers. So Terry is the person, which I can identify, but I tell you, Terry puts me to shame, that's always on the go. And he's into a number of different things. Now, I wonder, someone says, let's see, Terry, you are truly called and connected to the source, which keeps you, he has to be, right, Charlene, in order to pull off all of that stuff. But I wonder, is there anyone else out there that can identify? You like to do a lot of different things. Terry said that he's fulfilled by doing. And I can get that. There's a certain thing within each of us that drives us. And for some of us, it is, being actively involved in things, having our mind going. And Terry, you've shared pouring into the lives of other people. That's the common theme through everything that you do, is teaching and sharing and leading. So it's okay if that's you, and he's still writing books. Right. Isn't that amazing that with all that is going on, that God has graced you, Terry, to still be able to write. So thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Saundra, what do you do when you are not writing?
Well, from introvert number 3 on this call, we talked about that yesterday.
Yes, we did.
I'm a beach walker, and I love walking the beach. I love jazz music. When we get ready to go back to in-person activities, when there's a jazz concert on the beach, I'm just over the top. I do a lot of church-related activities. I'm a facilitator for our Freedom Curriculum, which is a 21-day self-guided curriculum for people. We meet with them once a week for 3 weeks and go through as a small group the material in the course. I'm also a care partner, and care partners at our church, we just walk alongside people during certain seasons of their life. So they sign up for a care partner based on what they feel they need. So right now I'm a care partner with couples. I have been with divorced women, and then also women who had troubled marriages. And actually the book is written from a perspective of a care partner walking alongside. I train care partners as well in the near future, because I have written this book has opened some avenues as far as me being on a writing team at the church. I guess they figured this young lady can put together a couple of words here. So,
there you go.
Yeah, we're going to update some of the material, and so I'll actually be on a team of writers soon, so I'm excited about that. But to balance all of that out, I have to admit that lately I have become addicted to paternity court TV episodes on Facebook, the 10 and 15 minute blurbs. And I'll tell you, don't judge me, but I'll tell you.
Nope, we're not judging. Nobody's judging, right?
I'll tell you why. There's a very good reason why I'm doing this. It's very psychological and very deep. Okay. The narratives that I hear from people that don't necessarily think like I think, it has really helped me to develop the capacity to expand my mind, to see some of the issues that people get into with relationships. And a lot of it, I see root causes that are more apparent now than they used to be in the past. And it's really helped me to see how Judge Lauren Lakes deals with them, talks with them, but she just has a heart to help them also. So it's actually developed more of a sense of empathy and understanding on my part. So it's, very deep.
I love that. I love the diversity of answers, the different. So you're definitely busy. You've got a lot that you have going on, but then I'm also a fellow beach lover. So St. Pete Beach is my favorite in Florida that I've been to so far. So I love walking the beach, but then you also make time for something fun. So you might have shocked the audience with that last revelation.
Right.
I will admit that I didn't see that one coming, but sometimes it's good to, as you share, be exposed to something different, being exposed to a different way of thinking, right? Because we can get so siloed into how we think, and then most of the people that we surround ourselves with tend to think similarly. So it's good to be challenged by a different perspective. And what I also heard is for you to be able to develop compassion and to figure out how you can use what you learned from that to apply in what you do. So thank you so much for sharing. Zach, what about you? What do you do when you are not writing?
I love to exercise. So anybody ever heard of the insanity workouts with Sean T? I am addicted to those. Yeah. So I do those almost every day. It's just, it makes me feel like a superhero after I'm done. It's the hardest stuff I've ever done in my life. You feel like you're about to pass out, but afterwards, you just feel great. And so the whole week, I feel a lot more relaxed. So I love to exercise. I love to travel. Unfortunately, we can't travel these days as much as we would like, but, I love to travel. I love adventure. And that's what I love about travel. I love going on adventures. I'm also an introvert. So, I took my first solo trip internationally last year, and it was an incredible experience because it got me out of my comfort zone. I met a friend in Italy, and I just learned a lot. I loved, the adventure, and loved, having to figure things out, and, not knowing the language, trying to, find my way. So I love the adventure. I love kind of, a different pace, and not knowing was inspiring. And I think that, I'm trying to be more intentional about those kind of adventures where it's unfamiliar territory, because I get you learn things about yourself, and then you get ideas for stories or books or whatever, workshops. But I think it's true. I'm really coming to value becoming comfortable being uncomfortable in those kind of adventures. Yeah.
Wow, that's a huge nugget, because this journey to writing a book, to marketing a book, and whatever comes next, right, is a journey in the uncomfortable. So we all have to learn to embrace that, because whatever God has called us to is always going to cause us to step outside of our comfort zone. So I heard a connection there. Zach, yes, I know about the Insanity Workout. I had the pleasure of actually doing that live with Shanti, one of the hardest workouts I've ever done, even though I've been working out for a while. So that's definitely a challenging one. So kudos to you for getting in there, doing that workout, and being consistent. And I love that you've gotten the ability to travel, and that you got to meet new friends and expose yourself to a different culture. Now, I still have to work on being good with the unknown. I'm not quite there yet, but it sounds like you've made a lot of progress in that area. So kudos to you. So now, Terry, I've got to circle back, because we've got 3 introverts. You don't identify with introversion, do you?
I'm outnumbered, but by no means feel diminished at all. I got this. I'm still here.
See? You're still here, and it's important that you are here. But here's the learning, though, for our audience, right? Is that you've seen diversity. Everyone had different answers to these questions. We've got introverts, we've got extroverts. Regardless, you can still do this, all right? So don't believe the lie. I hear this a lot, that authors have a certain profile. They do certain things. They have a certain way of thinking. They've always written. You didn't hear that from our panelists, right? So whatever God has called you to do, trust that he's going to provide the grace. He's going to provide the resources. He's going to provide the tools that you need. Will it require you to stretch? Yeah, it's going to require you to stretch. It may require you to learn new skills. It may require you to work with a coach or a consultant to help bring you to that next level. But if that desire has been planted in you, don't let that stop you from moving forward. Let's see, we've got some comments here. Let's see what we've got. All right, so we've got some folks that also love jazz. I love that. I get tired just writing all day. I get it. Getting out and walking. Stephen, kudos to you for getting in some exercise. Yeah, you got to break up that day sometimes. Let's see. Chanel says, Zach, that you can have the insanity workout. I don't think she wants to join you.
I don't blame her at all.
I don't think she wants to join you. I have some of my best revelations and growth in the realm of uncomfortableness. Crystal, such a blessing. That is so, so true. Nolan started writing after 50. Awesome. It's never too late. I have this conversation with my mom. She's not on today, so I can say it. I have this conversation with my mom all the time. There is no age limit on pursuing your dreams. Don't let age be a deterrent. So kudos to you, Nolan, for getting started. Let's see. Keep on walking on the path. Music lover and music. Love that. Charlene says, I'm 58. That's right, Charlene. It is not too late to dream. It is not too late to do something new. So let's talk now a little bit more about your journey as an author. So I would love to hear from each of you, all of you, again, with varied backgrounds. What inspired you to become an author? Like, what made you feel, what was your confirmation that you were called to write? And this time, Terry, I'll start with you.
Well, I'll try to be very brief. But I started writing after a tragic divorce. 2006, I separated. And in 2009, my divorce was final. I was finishing up grad school and had visited my children in another state, which I did probably 3 or 4 times a month. I would drive to the other state and have lunch or spend time or spend the weekend there and drive back for church on Sunday. And this one visit, I was sitting with my 2 small babies in the cafeteria and talking to them, and neither one of them would go back to class. And so I sat with them at the end of lunch and cried with them. Whew, I'll get emotional, and talk with them. And it took me a while, but I coached them back to class. And I don't remember how I made it back to my car, but I made it back to my car in tears. And for the next 4.5 hours drive back home, I cried out to God. And I had a business, the College Prep Buddies was up and running, and it had about 400 students involved. The church was doing very well. I was doing some other things, and I was broken. I did not know what I needed to do, but the important piece in my life was my kids. And so I drove that 4.5 hours in tears and asked God, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to write about it. And so I immediately started, as some folks would say, the download started. I started getting information. I was driving, crying, and calling my house and leaving voicemail messages. By the time I finished that 4.5 hour drive, I had already determined the title of the book, several of the chapters, and I got home and I put it together, immediately put it together. I took it to the local college. 3 English teachers and 2 researchers examined at the time, the manuscript, and was completely blown away. I felt so insecure. I felt that my work was not good enough, but they would not stop reading. They all in concert said, finish the book and do not allow anyone to change the narrative. And so that started me on the journey to writing. I actually called my mentor and said, I don't know how to write. I don't know how to write. And I had just finished grad school. He said, yes, you do. So I took all of those pieces, those experiences, and I started writing. I set the book down for almost 2.5 years, was back into higher education, and the Lord tapped me and said, I did not call you here. I called you to write. And it took me 2.5 years to walk away from that chair at the college And that's how I end up writing the first book, The Third Dig, which has kind of launched everything else from there.
Wow. Wow. You are, I could tell you that I am seeing some comments pop up here, Terry, that your story has impacted some people. He did it with and for you. They're inspired by your story, and that compels them to finish. I did not call you here. So audience, if you can identify with feeling broken, you've been through, those are my favorite people to work with. You've been through something that you didn't know if you were going to be able to make it through, and somehow, some way, God got you through. Best believe that is a message that needs to be shared. And you've heard how as trying of an experience that was for Terry, that God is now using that so that he can be a blessing to other people. So Terry, thank you so much for being willing to share such personal moments with our audience. Saundra, I'm going to go to you, and then I'll go to Chandra. So Saundra, tell us what inspired you to write. How did you realize that you were called to write?
Well, I'm compelled to walk with those facing the same journey that God and I have already conquered. I would say that to start. And so the inspiration is initial, but it's also ongoing. Like with every word I wrote, I just envisioned myself walking beside the reader, identifying with them, but not leaving them where they are. And actually, one question that you, Coach Tam, asked me couple of months ago, you said, how would you feel if you never published this book? And I actually had to think about that, and I understand the emotional pain that released women have, that they experience. And I thought about the question that you asked me, and I thought, I have some answers for these women. And if I never share them, that would be very sad, So that also inspired me to just keep going. And then again, I've seen so many women just manage brokenness. They're not totally broken, but they're not totally healed. They're kind of in the middle. They're in the hallway. And managing brokenness to me is good for a season, but not a lifetime. And so I want to tell women certain things. Wholeness is your goal. As an author, I want to show a woman how to take that new canvas of her life and just start to redraw it from where she is. So that has inspired me. But also, I had to think about what my total goal is. And as a care partner or a one-on-one coach or a group facilitator, I realized that if I'm sitting across from a woman or a couple that's having issues, there's actually more people sitting across from me. That person is just a representation. There's a whole family sitting across from me. There's a tribe sitting across from me. And as that woman heals, that tribe will heal, especially when it comes to divorced or released situations where there are children involved. The children's heart follow the mom's heart. And so I want to see families healed. And that really motivates me to think that I can make a difference not only in a woman's life or a couple's life, but a family's life as they heal, because the enemy can wreak havoc on a family that's not forgiving, that's holding on to bitter roots, et cetera, et cetera. So my inspiration comes from what God has deposited in me and what I've been able to accomplish with him. And if I never say this, if I never write this, then I will be guilty of withholding a gift, an answer to someone else's problem.
So you're going to make me run. So now I got to talk to myself. I was talking to everybody else like, y'all, don't go get carried away. So I'm going to talk to myself now. But that's so important, right? Is one of the things that we have to realize is when God calls us to do something, there is someone else attached to it.
Right.
Someone else's deliverance is attached to your obedience.
Right.
So your willingness to share your story and publish that book, and congratulations again, and now look at other ways that you can get that message out, isn't just so that Saundra can say, I accomplished my personal goal.
Right.
It is because there are people that need to hear that message. And that is true for those of you that are aspiring authors, those of you that have published. Don't give up if the sales haven't been what you thought they should be.
Right.
There are people that need to hear that message. That is
Right.
why you were called to write. And as Saundra said, you have answers. You have answers to their problems. They are out there searching right now.
Right.
We need to help them find you, but they're searching for answers. Wouldn't it be a tragedy for that person to be able to benefit from what you have to give them, and you decided to not answer the call, right?
Right.
That there's this whole group of people that need what you have, but if you never made the decision to be courageous enough to move forward, then they wouldn't have the blessing of what you've now shared through release. So thank you so much. And you're hearing a trend, audience, that so far 2 of our authors, their own personal experience shaped their journey as an author. So if you've been through some stuff, which I have too, God wants to use that. Scripture tells us that all right, I'm gonna hurry up and then I'm gonna move on. All things, Terry, help me. All things work together for good. All things. Even the things that almost break you. Let me go on. Chandra, what inspired you? What helped you to realize, that you were called to write?
Y'all are about to take me to church. I was over here on mute saying, come on.
I'm trying to keep it down.
Preach that word. But my story is very similar to some of the other panelists. I was inspired to write from a place of brokenness as well. Ever since I was a little girl, I had all of these dream jobs, all of these ideas in my head of things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be an author. I wanted to be a filmmaker. At one point, I wanted to be a rapper, but that's a whole nother story because I was not good at it.
Dr. B, I'm going to make up a rap name for you.
I had rings on every finger and all these necklaces. I'll have to share a picture with you.
Yeah, you got to send that picture. I got to see that one.
Yes, ma'am. But I never completed a book, but that was a dream of mine to always write a book. And then a couple of years ago, I had gotten a gift card to a day spa. And I went to get a massage. And unfortunately, I came out with this injury, a neck injury. I had a slip disc in my neck. And so for an entire year, I couldn't work. I couldn't do simple things around the house, like bending down to get a pot out of the cabinet. I couldn't cook. It was very difficult for me to do basic things like comb my hair, things that we take for granted because so many of us are able to do them on a daily basis without the assistance of someone else, having my husband and my mom comb my hair or help lift me up. So that went on for an entire year. And like I said, I couldn't work. And what I decided to do at that point, because I had also gone through depression, what I decided to do at that point was to journal. And I bought a journal. And I hadn't journaled since I was a child, probably about the age of 14. But I bought a journal and I decided to do some reflection, and I wanted to reflect on my life, everything that I had done, everything that I wish I had done differently, and just really think about my life and what I felt brought me to the point that I was currently in, depressed and broken and feeling lost, feeling like there was more to life. And I was just sort of existing and not really living. And so my book actually came from my journal, and I wrote for months. And I'll be honest, it was painful to write. I was on so many different pain medications. And I shared this with you earlier, Tam, that I would literally stand up and write a few pages in my journal. And when that became too painful, I'd go lay down in the bed and I would hold up the journal and I'd just write until my arm got tired or the pain was just too unbearable. And I did that for a while, for several months. And like Terry, I heard God speak to me and say, you wonder why those other books never came to pass, because this is going to be your first book. And I don't know about any of you on here, but sometimes when God says some stuff, I'm like, oh, no, this is my personal stuff. I am not putting this out here. I don't want to talk about depression. I don't want to talk about this and that. This is for me and only me. And so I sat with it and I sat with it. And I felt that nudge again. And so I started to be obedient. I typed up the book. It took me a while to type it. I would do it what I could and then, sit back down. But I eventually typed up the book, and that became my first book. And it's a book about healing. It's a book about really getting to know yourself. And it's a self-help book for women. And I'll tell you, I poured everything that I had into it because I was speaking from a broken place, and I knew what healing should look like. I know the journey that you should take as a woman to heal yourself, because I had lived that. And so I think that's why the book is so relatable, because we as women are nurturers. We put everybody else before we put ourselves, together. And sometimes that takes a toll on us. And so it's really a book of learning self-love, learning to set boundaries, learning to say no, learning to really operate from a space of greatness, because God has called all of us to live in greatness, not in mediocrity.
Wow, so many nuggets in that. You went through a tragic experience. I don't know about anybody else, but I love massages. It's one of the things that I miss in this COVID situation. You're going into something that you think is going to be relaxing. Sometimes we have those experiences where, we think it's just an ordinary, I'm just going in here and doing this. And on the other side of those experiences, something has drastically changed. And so I can't even imagine what that must have felt like, but yet and still God used that experience to bring you to a place where you could finally birth the book. And I think there's so much in that too, because I heard you say, Chandra, that the other ones didn't work out because this was the one that you were called to write. And I believe that's a word for somebody, is maybe the reason that it hasn't quite come together yet is because there's a certain message that God wants you to share. Not to say that those other things that you are excited about aren't important, but if you are called to write, there is a specific calling to what you are to share. And as Chandra has said, sometimes that's going to mean, I can identify with that too. Like, Lord, we ain't going to put that, we're not putting that in here, are we? I don't want to include that, right? Because we would rather talk about the victories and the successes. It's really hard to be honest about the challenges that we face and the mental and the emotional stress and strain that we are under. But then also what I heard, Chandra, is, which some of you need to hear that are listening as well, is your experience qualifies you. You feel like you got to have all these 20 million things. Your experience for the person that you are called to reach, your experience qualifies you, because they want someone who has been through what they are currently going through. They don't want someone who's talking about what they read from a textbook or a class they took. It's great to have those things. No knock. I have certifications too. They are valuable. But I'm a firm believer that a certification or a class alone is not enough. Not for that deep stuff. People want someone that is relatable, that has gone through these experiences. So don't discount what you have been through. There are people that need, as Chandra has talked about, she knows what healing now looks like because she had to work through it herself. There are some people that need to hear those steps. You can be the person that guides them through that process. So Chandra, thank you for sharing. Zach, what about you? Now your story, because I've had a chance to work with you and talk with you a lot, your story is a little bit different, but share with us what inspired you? Like, how did you have that epiphany that you were called to write?
Yeah, so I don't have a memory of when I felt like I was called to write. From my earliest memories, stories have always been in my head. I've always loved stories, and it's because I was a weird kid. I was really shy. I always felt like everyone in the room knew the rules, and I didn't know. They were more confident. I always felt weird and out of place and awkward. And stories, I would just tell stories in my head, because then I could become anything. I could become the hero. I could become the smartest. I could create a whole world where I didn't feel so awkward and, shy and weird. And I remember in first grade, I was so slow in finishing my work all the time because I would be daydreaming all the time. And I would put music to stories that I would have in my head, and I would create these scenes and episodes. And that's what I would do. And I couldn't go out to recess with the other kids because I'd have to be inside finishing my work because I was so slow, and then I remember one day my dad, had to call the school because I was tired of not being able to go outside and play during recess. And so we worked that out. But I was telling myself stories for my whole life. I'm adopted. My family looks like the United Nations. We're a very mixed racial family. And so, dealing with weirdness and insecurity and feeling out of place and feeling judged, stories and storytelling was how I coped. It's how I became powerful. And over time, I began to really embrace my weirdness. I still think I'm weird today. And I really celebrate that. And I really see the power in owning your weirdness. And I do believe that individuality really is all it's cracked up to be. Not self-centeredness individuality, but like when you can really embrace who you are as an individual, your uniqueness. That's powerful. I think the most successful and happy people in the world are the ones that have figured out how to use that gift that God has given them when they were born, when they were created, and found ways to use that gift in service of their goals. And so, writing taught me, how to do that. It really taught me how to embrace, I'm really drawn to characters and stories that are the underdog. And so, the book that I wrote, Reverend Clay Evans' biography, The Last Blues Preacher, is really a story about an underdog. It's a story about someone who didn't speak words until they were almost 3 years old, who felt weird, who felt strange, who felt awkward. But then this person who found a way to own their voice and became one of the most famous preachers and gospel singers in the country. So those things helped. And then my father was a speech pathologist, an audiologist who worked for the VA hospital. So I watched my dad spend his 40-year career helping vets who had traumatic brain injury and had trouble speaking and swallowing. I watched my dad help them. When you can't physically speak because of a traumatic brain injury, you feel trapped in yourself. And I watched my dad give people tools so they could find ways to connect with the world. And that's really, for me, what storytelling is. It's finding ways to connect with the world, finding ways to celebrate, your weirdness, your uniqueness, your experience, and to connect with others, and then empower them to do the same thing so that, they don't feel trapped, that they can find ways to share their uniqueness with the world to help other people feel confident enough to do the same.
Wow. I love that, Zach. So thank you so much for sharing that, right? So, because I believe that there are probably some in the audience that can identify with feeling weird, like you don't quite fit in. I can identify with that, right? You have a different way of thinking, and sometimes you may even feel like you've got to stay to yourself because people are not going to get it. But telling stories allows you to be able to communicate in a way that's going to inspire people. And so even from your experience with your family, just the diversity in your family, I can imagine that there are so many stories within that And then all of this set you up to be able to do what you now do and have a unique perspective. I'm a firm believer that uniqueness is good, and that what we need to do as aspiring authors and those that will publish more books and maybe go on to speaking and coaching is not invent someone else, but to be ourselves. Because trust, there are other people that feel weird too. You just got to find them, right? You're finding your tribe of people that have similar experiences to you. Maybe they also grew up in a family where there was diversity, right? You are going to connect with them because of your experience. Your experience, I hope you're hearing that from our panelists, are so valuable. So don't discount yourself. I was reading this morning before the panel. I'm going to say this real quick and then we're going to move on. I was reading about Gideon. Gideon had a problem. He always wanted to disqualify himself. God told him, hey, this is what you can do and this is what I see for you, but Gideon couldn't see it. For those of you that have the Gideon complex, I hope you're hearing from our panelists. Don't let your insecurities, don't let your fears, don't let what you feel like you don't have, the paper and credentials that you don't have that you would like to have, don't let that stop you. If you have been called to write, trust what God has said over what you feel and what you think. I'm going to have our panelists share a little bit from their books. Would you guys like to hear from their books? I know that you are going to enjoy this. Oh, we're getting some great comments. People are really appreciating you sharing with transparency. There is power in learning to embrace your uniqueness, even when it makes you feel uncomfortable in the way that God has created you to be. Agree 100%, Shirley. Yes, feeling alone and trapped. If we can identify with feeling weird, we aren't. I got you. The panel is awesome. People are loving what you guys are sharing. So thank you for being so transparent. So what we're going to do now, family, is we are going to transition, and I want to give our authors an opportunity to share, again, the title of their book, read a small excerpt, and then they're going to expound upon it a little bit. I know that this is a piece that I always look forward to, is getting to actually hear a little bit more from each of the authors' books. So Zach, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask you to share the title of your book, give us a brief taste, and then tell us what you'd like us to take away from what you shared with us today.
So the title of my book is The Last Blues Preacher, Reverend Clay Evans' Black Lives and the Faith That Woke the Nation. And the passage that I want to read is really, there's so many wonderful stories Reverend Evans told me, working with Dr. King, meeting so many incredible people. But I think the part that I find most special is the moments that he and I shared together at the beginning of the journey. We spent 8 years writing his biography. And so I want to share a little bit about the first time I met Reverend Clay Evans. It was in Chicago. I was I was the assistant pastor of a church in Chicago, Hyde Park. And this opportunity just kind of fell in my lap. And so this is the first time I met Reverend Evans. The first time I met Reverend Clay Evans was on a brisk summer afternoon in Chicago, Thursday, August 25th, 2011. The air outside that morning was cool, as if fall had stolen a few weeks of summer. We sat outside on the patio deck. We had finished all appropriate introductions. I was attempting to communicate my reluctance to take on the responsibility to write Reverend Clay Evans' biography. At the time, I was serving as an associate minister of a church in Chicago's Hyde Park neighborhood and had many weekly responsibilities. I worried that my busy schedule as a minister would not leave me much free time to write a biography. In addition to my ministerial duties, I was in the final stages of writing a thesis for a Master's of Arts program at Vanderbilt Divinity School. I still had a significant amount of writing to do before my thesis was complete, but more than my anxiety, I felt inadequate to the task. I was unsure of myself. Surely there were more experienced writers who could tell Reverend Evans' story. After all, I hadn't even thought about writing a biography. I confessed my inexperiences. I highlighted my weaknesses. I voiced my concerns. Reverend Evans looked at me and said calmly, "I want you to be concerned, but not worried. You can't disappoint me. Full speed ahead." Despite my reservations, my gut was telling me that I should say yes. And full speed ahead, we all went. So I'm just gonna skip to the end. So I interview him for the first time. We're sitting down. I'm feeling the weight and the burden, telling this man's life story. And 5 of us are sitting in this room together. And it just feels overwhelming. I could feel the weight of the moment as I looked upon the faces of those seated in that dining room table. At the time, we were all still mostly strangers, yet we gathered eagerly in spite of busy schedules and work weeks. The energy in that room was palpable. The task before us was daunting, and my task as the chief writer, to tell the story of a man whose ministry helped define the culture of an entire city and the gospel music industry, seemingly impossible. It was a heavy burden that I alone had to endure. Suddenly, unexpectedly, that weight lifted from me. I didn't feel as alone. I opened my laptop. I placed a tape recorder in front of Reverend Evans. I took a deep breath. I pressed record. "Thank you so much, Reverend Evans, for your time," I said. "I want to ask you some questions about your life and your ministry at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church." I can still see him do this. He grinned. He grinned at me almost as if he could sense the mixture of excitement and anxiety. "Go ahead, Reverend," he said in that low, gravelly, resolute voice. "Full speed ahead." So for me, the takeaway I would say is that as writers, when we're passionate about something, we have insecurities. We have insecurities about how people will view our work, how people will receive what we've done. But when I look at Reverend Evans' story, someone who had so many things in front of him, so many insecurities, so many challenges, he was always a person who found a way to own his voice. And that exchange is so important to me because that was a moment where I began to start celebrating my own voice and owning it. And his story teaches us that you can accomplish incredible things and make the world, add so much beauty to the world when you have the courage to own and celebrate your own voice and go full speed ahead.
I love it. Full speed ahead, own your own voice. Family, give it up for Zach. You're going to hear more from him a little bit later in our second panel. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your story. I could almost visualize you guys sitting down. Chandra, let me go to you next. Tell us about your book and share with us a brief excerpt.
Sure. My book is called You Go Girl, 25 Ways to Step into Your Greatness. And as I said earlier, it's a self-help book for women. And it's really a book for us as women to really learn how to celebrate what each of us has, this uniqueness, this greatness. And of course, all of God's creatures, we are all great. But as a woman, I have to identify with my sisters, right? So it's really a way for us to really honor ourselves and stop dishonoring ourselves. And so I want to read from one of the chapters, and the title of the chapter is called Let It Go. Because I know I had some things that I had to let go of. So again, this chapter is called Let It Go. Have you ever met someone, or maybe that someone is you, that refuses to let go of the past? They will hold on to it for dear life. You know, the person that constantly says they wish they would or could have done things differently. We've all been that person or dealt with that person. There were times in my life when I made myself physically sick thinking about all the things I should have done differently. Guess what? I didn't do them differently, and I'm still the woman that I am today despite all of the mistakes that I've made. My life at one point seemed like a series of bad decisions. I now understand that every experience, both good and bad, prepared me for now, for my future. They prepared me to be the author, poet, speaker that I am today. That's right. Each one of my experiences gave me the motivation and inspiration to speak and write, and not to mention the subject material to speak and write about. When I finally realized that the past was impossible to change, I made a critical decision to stop beating myself up over it. I began to focus my energy on more positive things like practicing gratitude. I started off simple in the beginning. I thank God for food, for shelter, and even for the breath as I woke up each morning. And as I continued to operate in this gratitude space, I had less room to focus on the mistakes that I made. And you may even think that I'm crazy for this one, but I decided to have a funeral for my negative thoughts. I literally gave myself a date to grieve, and at the end of that day, I said out loud, Chandra, I don't want to hear any more about this. Let it go. These negative thoughts are not here to serve you, so why are you allowing them room to grow in your life? I began to surrender to the power of my future and suffocated my past. Letting the past go has felt so amazing and powerful. I recommend having your own funeral for your negative thoughts, where you surrender to your future. It will help you to experience the power of your amazing self. And then just a few reflection questions where I ask the readers to take out a piece of paper or a journal and write down some answers to the following questions. What are you holding on to that you need to let go of? How is holding on to this hurting you? How is it impacting your relationships with others? And what would your life look like if you finally let it go? Now have a funeral for it and let it go.
Wow. Wow. That, you know what, says it all. I'm seeing some wows in the comments. The family is loving that, a funeral for my negative thoughts. I love that. Rebirth, emerge. What would life look like if you release those negative thoughts? It's time to let it go. Chandra, thank you so much for sharing with us. Terry, you are up next. Tell us about the title of your book and share an excerpt with us.
All right, let me disconnect from the last time I spoke. So I talked about the journey of starting to write. That book is still in the final stages of editing. The title of that book is Unfathered. I would like to say before reading that after making the journey 268 miles over the course of 3 years, I gained custody of my children, and I was able to successfully help them transition through middle school, high school, and now college. The title of my book is The Third Dig that I will be reading from. It has a workbook companion titled The Third Dig Handbook, Success Handbook. And it talks about, the third dig is founded in the book of Genesis, where it talks about Isaac going and redigging the wells of his father, Abraham. And so he digs, of course, throughout a famine. And at the third dig, he has these experiences where success was, in fact, what some would call failures, but he commenced to continuing to dig. He digs a second time, and at the third dig, he looks around and he sees that the people who had taken the first two wells were no longer present. So the third dig talks about, and he calls the third well Rehoboth, which is translated the place of room. So I use this book to talk to individuals everywhere about not changing the skills, talents that you have, the passions that you have, but oftentimes it's the location of your skills, talents, and package that makes all the difference. So instead of reinventing, recreating yourself as the weird guy Zach, as what I would call myself, I'm just different. I'm very different. Instead of looking at that as a negative, I've learned to understand that my difference adds flavor to everybody I'm connected to. And so when I talk about the third dig, I talk to people about figuring out where it is you're supposed to be. And when you get there, it will make room for you. So I'm going to be reading from the chapter titled, Can You Dig? There are 5 lessons within this chapter, within this particular chapter, and I'm going to be reading from lesson 4. Bring closure in places that inhibit your success. Learn to depart from environments that stifle your passions and ideas. Do not allow these experiences to create remorse, regret, or retaliation. Although challenging, the greater objective is to accept these terms and reposition yourself in pursuit of success. This requires reinventing yourself or seeing yourself fulfilled in a different place. Every occurrence in this instance will appear achievable when the resolution has been reached that your present state has served its purpose. You can now give yourself the permission to seek new opportunities elsewhere. I use the expression, give yourself the permission, because we often internalize obligations to places, people, and things that do not reciprocate the same. Resolve this obligation with self-affirmations by saying, I deserve more, I have served this place well, and I can do better. Move forward without demonstrating traits of pessimism. Give sufficient consideration to new prospects that promote your ideas and contributions, and avoid transporting unhealthy emotions as you navigate through the transitional process. Accept the lesson, not the hurt. Every place will not reject you or your contributions. More importantly, avoid transporting the same expectations into your new experience. It's okay to be cautious, but avoid being overly suspicious. It can potentially create hostility and corrupt your conduct and business relationships. Confront each new experience with a new perspective. Say to yourself, this place has the capacity to support my success, and do not allow any residue from your past to linger. So as we talk about moving on, Rehoboth is about that. I've had some tragic experiences. They don't determine me. They don't define me. It's a setup. It moves me into a place called the third dig. And once I learned to embrace who I am and what it was I came through, I can't have a message without the text. And so Rehoboth is about teaching people to take the places that have been traumatic and turning them into a place where we are now triumphant.
From traumatic to triumphant. I love that. That's a word for somebody. Somebody said that is so good.
Yeah.
That's a word from somebody. You're stuck about what happened. It's time to move on. Oh, Lord, I got to go. I got to go before we go there. Saundra, tell us about the title of your book and share with us an excerpt.
Okay, the title of my book is Released: 7 Ways God Heals After Divorce. And the segment that I'm going to read, it comes from the renewed chapter. And in this chapter, I stress the importance of lining our minds up with the mind of Christ and of choosing to see life and situations from his perspective. So I share a very personal story to make this point clear. And it reads, many years ago, while still married, I was believing God to rectify the problems within my marriage and bring about reconciliation. However, one day, the circumstances I was hoping to change took a turn for the worst. A new development sent me tumbling emotionally. My hope was diminished drastically, and even my faith was shaken. In my despair, I began driving around endlessly, Anxiety wouldn't let me stay at home. Each time I attempted to return home, I just couldn't. Finally, after what seemed like hours, I decided to check into a hotel. Entering the room, all I could feel was confusion, hopelessness, and tangible pain. My mind just couldn't understand how God could allow this latest turn of events. In my boldness, I decided to challenge God. I remember my part of the conversation clearly. What are you going to do now? What do you want me to do? It's just me and you here. I'm not leaving this hotel room until you give me an answer. I was desperate. I picked up my Bible, opened it, and began to read the first scripture I saw. It was Isaiah 41:10, and it began with, "Do not fear." I immediately closed the Bible and proceeded to repeat the same questions to God because in my unrenewed mind, he was not answering me. Fear was definitely not my issue, or so I thought. This scenario repeated itself with me being led to the same passage and then asking God for answers until I finally read the entire scripture and saw the revelation. Do not fear. I started to admit the truth to myself. I was afraid. Pain, abandonment, being judged, and drastic life changes all terrified me deeply. For I am with thee. I began to feel God's manifested presence in that room. Neither be thou dismayed. I was feeling distressed at the unexpected turn of events, not knowing how I would possibly process all that had happened. For I am thy God. I will strengthen you and help you. Yea, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God was desiring a relationship with me, one in which I would know, no matter what, that he was able to hold, strengthen, and keep me. It was at this point in my hotel experience that I realized I wasn't there for answers to my circumstances, which had been my purpose. I was there to experience the peace of God, which was his purpose. I came seeking an outcome from God. He desired my trust and submission. I thought I needed a yes, no, or at least a maybe as answers to the dilemmas of my life. My father wanted me to understand his faithfulness and feel his unconditional love. At that point, with tears streaming down my face, all I could say was, Lord, I feel you holding me. In that room that night, I had everything I needed and more. As I exited, I was a completely different woman, mentally and emotionally, than when I entered. There was a calmness in my spirit and a deeper love and admiration for the God I served. Even though I had no answers, I knew that my Father had waited for me there to assure me that he was always upholding me. He sent me on my way with a renewed mind and an uplifted heart. My life felt totally different, even though nothing externally had changed. The more we allow God to transform us, the closer we come to experiencing the life we should be living. The degree of our submission to God is directly related to our ability to reset our minds in order to promote healing instead of reinforcing hurt. We hold an extremely powerful key within our thoughts. We can either unlock our conformity to the world's view, or we can unlock our transformation by God's power. Use your key correctly. And so I use a lot of stories, analogies. I paint a lot of pictures in order to drive the points home that I'm trying to drive home within the book.
Wow. I can almost imagine you there in the hotel room having that conversation with God. And I know that some of our audience can identify, you got some questions for God. I don't understand.
Right.
How did I get here? I don't understand what's happening. But what Chandra is telling us is it's not just about our circumstances. There's a transformation that God wants to do in us. Thank you so much for sharing.
Right.
So, audience, family, have you been blessed by these authors so far? Give me a shout in the comments. Have you been blessed by? I will tell you, I have been blessed. I feel recharged from all that you guys have poured out and all that you have shared. So many nuggets that you have dropped on this audience. And the good news, I'm hearing, yes, extremely. I have been so blessed blessed indeed. The good news, family, is you're going to get this replay. So not only are you here with us live, but you're going to get this so you can listen again and again and again. Whenever you need that pick-me-up, whenever you need that inspiration to push forward and move in the direction that God has called you, this team, this group of esteemed panelists is going to be here to lift you up.